Today we're going to discuss the famous Dawkins scale, a 1 to 7 point scale introduced in the best-selling 2006 book, The God Delusion, by evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, a scale which quantifies one's belief in the existence of God. 1 for a strong theist, 4 for a pure agnostic, 7 for a strong atheist, with extended numbers in the 8 to 12 range for those who do not fit on the original 7-point scale.
In the book, you establish a scale of 1 to 7 of atheism. 1 being someone who is utterly certain there is a God, and 7 being someone who is utterly certain there is not. But you yourself say you're only a 6. Can you tell us why?
I think any scientist would be unwise to commit himself to saying there definitely is not anything. I mean, I can't definitely commit myself to saying there are no fairies. I'm pretty sure there are no fairies, but I think it would be unscientific to do what the extreme religious people do and say, I know there is a God. I can't say, I know there is no God. I can't say, I know there are no pink unicorns. So a 6, maybe 6.9 is reasonable.
Right.
Here's the original version of the Dawkins scale as found on page 73 of The God Delusion. It states, 1. Strong theist, 100% probability of God. In the words of Carl Jung, I do not believe, I know. 2. Very high probability, but short of 100%. De facto theist. I cannot know for certain, but I strongly believe in God and live my life on the assumption that He is there. 3. Higher than 50%, but not very high. Technically agnostic, but leaning towards theism. I am very uncertain, but I am inclined to believe in God. 4. Exactly 50%. Completely impartial agnostic. God's existence and non-existence are exactly equal probable. 5. Lower than 50%, but not very low. Technically agnostic, but leaning towards atheism. I don't know whether God exists, but I'm inclined to be skeptical. 6. Very low probability, but short of 0. De facto atheist. I cannot know for certain, but I think God is very improbable, and I live my life on the assumption that He is not there. 7. Strong atheist. I know there is no God with the same conviction as Jung knows there is one.
Do you believe in God? Oh, that's a big question. Okay, no.
So there's Irish physicist Philip Moriarty and his views on the existence of God. And to note, in 2009, he was actually the one who introduced me to the scale. He's part of Nottingham University's 60 Symbols YouTube channel, where they upload educational videos on symbols such as those for quarks, Feynman diagram symbols, summation symbols used in Fourier analysis, and so on. The videos still shown here are from his video on entropy, wherein he states that ordered arrangements of students, such as shown on the left, are in a low entropy state, and that dispersed arrangements of students, such as shown on the right, are in a high entropy state. He then went on in the threads to argue with me that this was only a metaphor, and that in reality, in his own words, you cannot say that a particular arrangement of students has a thermodynamic entropy, which is paramount in modern terms to saying that the second law of thermodynamics and hence entropy does not apply to humans and human behavior. This comment irritated me so much by virtue of its inherent incorrectness and obvious implications that it drew out into a month-long debate totaling 60-plus pages of threads involving about 24 noted scientists, thinkers, and thermodynamicists, such as Wolfgang Muschik, senior editor of the Journal of Non-Equilibrium Thermodynamics, Ingo Müller, author of the 2007 A History of Thermodynamics, among others. During the debate, Moriarty commented to me that I am what Richard Dawkins would classify as level 6 agnostic. Agnostic in the sense that, although I cannot prove that there is or isn't a God, there are an infinite number of possibilities that I cannot definitively disprove. I was brought up in a very devout Catholic family and kicked against religion from the age of 9 when I began to ask questions about the ludicrous concept of transubstantiation in Catholicism.
My, I guess, departure from religion came, I think, as early as 9 or 10, when we were being taught about a big element of the Catholic faith, which is called transubstantiation. Transubstantiation, for those who don't know, means that during the Eucharist, during the sort of communion ceremony, the bread is actually physically changed, whatever that means in terms of Catholic doctrine, into the body of Christ. And I got very excited as a 9-year-old and stuck my hand up excitedly in the class and go, look, I got a microscope for Christmas. What we can do this really great experiment. We can look at the host beforehand, and then we can do the Holy Communion thing, and then we can look at it afterwards and compare the two. Wouldn't that be a great experiment? And I got sent out of the class. And also a note was sent. And I was told that those type of questions are not the questions you should ask.
In response to this, after going into Google Books and looking up the Dawkins scale, I commented back to Morarity, in the Dawkins scheme, I would be level 10, but I don't like the word atheist. I like the word scientist better. I read over 50 books on religion, currently practice and active, about 18 main varieties, mythology, Egyptology, etc., and know very clearly as to the background of most of the 10,000 gods to have come and gone, as well as the active ones. In the future, I might do some modern clarification videos on these topics. For example, is there a God? What happens when you die? Good versus evil, etc. But I am somewhat hesitant. These are very emotional topics for many.
Do you believe in God?
No.
I guess you'd have to put me down in the don't knows column on that one. I'm an agnostic.
No. I don't.
Do you believe in God?
No. Absolutely not. No evidence for it.
It's interesting. It's actually a topic that interests me a lot because I met scientists, there are fundamentalist Christian physicists, there are staunch atheist physicists. I would say probably the staunch atheists are probably in the majority.
I mean, I can't prove that there's no God, I can't prove that there is one, but as far as belief goes, I don't believe that there is one.
Do you believe in God?
Not really.
I don't believe in the sort of Judeo-Christian God, but then I also don't believe that the universe was sneezed out of the nose of the great green oracle Caesar. I don't believe that it was brought into existence by the flying spaghetti monster. I don't believe that Thor, Zeus, or whatever god you can think of. There are an infinite number of possibilities, and because I'm a scientist, what I'm interested in is evidence.
There's no contradiction. It's possible to both have a religious belief and to be a scientist. For my part, I guess maybe I just lack the imagination or the leap of faith you need to actually believe in religion as well. So you have to put me down in the agnostics column.
So there's a sampling of some of the representative views on belief in the existence of God expressed by the staff at Nottingham University in the physics and astronomy department. But the fact that scientists don't believe in God is nothing new. The following plot shows percent belief in God by leading scientists of the world over the last century, which shows that as of 2012, fewer than 5% of the world's leading scientists believe in God. In fact, it was Napoleon who conducted the first systematic study of religious beliefs of the world's leading scientists. The most noted example of these was his 1802 encounter with French physicist Pierre Laplace, who after recently finishing his 3-volume Celestial Mechanics, explaining the operation of the known universe according to mechanical principles, met with Napoleon, during which time Napoleon commented, "They tell me you have written this large book on the origin and mechanics of the universe, entirely without mention of God," to which Laplace famously retorted, "I had no need of that hypothesis." After which, he passed along the message to French mathematician Joseph Lagrange, who commented, "Ah, that's a fine conclusion indeed. It explains many things." The growing problem that we are faced with is that although over 95% of the world's leading scientists have discarded belief in the existence of God, many have, ironically and almost hypocritically, retained a large number of religious-based theories, such as life, death, afterlife, free will, choice to do good, choice to do evil, morality based on the notion of the weight of the soul or lightness of karma, spirituality, and other variants of belief such as nihilism, existential atheism, purposelessness, etc., none of which are rooted in the framework of the periodic table or a fundamental physico-chemical theory, which is not the fault of the scientists per se, but rather the fault of the closetedness of our belief systems, which we rarely bring out onto the table for open dialogue. To this end, to ferret out some of these obscure godless belief systems held by scientists the world over, the following is the extended 10-point range Dawkins scale, with which, over the last 2 years, I have been using to query various scientists I have come into contact with. The 8 range is for someone who is beyond atheism, is over 110% sure that there is no God, so much so to the effect that the question is not even a thought in the back of the mind, and as such do not prefer to be associated with the term atheist to the same extent that they do not prefer to be associated with the term atheist in the sense that one is an adherent to a disbelief in tooth fairies. French physicist Pierre Laplace might well represent someone in the 7 to 8 range. The 9-point range might be considered as a fill-in-the-blank range. The 10-point range is what we might aptly call the Goetheanist belief system, namely that A. God is a theory created by learned men of olden days. B. According to modern science, humans are evolved types of chemicals or molecules made from components of the periodic table, reactive to each other in the same manner as are the atoms on the periodic table reactive to each other. And C. That morality is governed by the symbols of physical chemistry, in particular the laws of chemical thermodynamics, namely that Gibbs free energy decreases in systems or processes accounts for what is considered natural, that Gibbs free energy increases in systems or processes accounts for what is considered unnatural, and that the two types of processes, natural and unnatural, are energetically coupled to each other, the former driving the latter, which accounts for the age-old problem of evil. The name of this Dawkins level 10 category, that of Goetheanism, the belief system, or Goetheanist, a conjunction of Goethe, the last universal genius, the person who arrived at this godless physical science belief system, and beyond atheism, would be considered an adherent of this philosophy of existence.
You do not accept the existence of a God, a divine prime mover.
No.
Now, the reason you don't is because you can't prove that such a entity or being or energy exists.
I can't, nor can anyone else. There is no proof.
There is no proof that there is no. So therefore, you've concluded that there isn't one.
That's right.
You can't prove there isn't.
You are never called upon to prove a negative. That's a law of logic. When you accept such an important issue as the creation of the universe, on faith, you're destroying your confidence and the validity of your own mind. It has to be either reason or faith. I am against God for the reason that I don't want to destroy reason. I don't...
Give us a chance, all right? We appreciate your zeal, but if you continue that, it's going to make it difficult for the other people to absorb what's going on here.
He says, how can I be against God? I'm against those who conceived that idea.
Yeah, but tell us why. Tell us why.
Because then it gives man permission to function irrationally, to accept something above and outside the power of their reason, and superior to reason.
So there's the famous philosopher Ayn Rand, author of Fountainhead, who, if here today, would likely classify herself in the 7 to 8 point range. In continuation, the following are a few representative samples of scientists I have pulled using the 10-point scale. The first is Russian physical chemist Georgy Gladchev, author of the 1997 book Thermodynamic Theory of the Evolution of Living Beings, who comments, I believe, like you, I am closer to the 10-point range. To give an example of a convoluted answer, the following is from Adrien de Lange, a South African chemical physicist who since 1984 has been working out a Gibbs free energy theory of spirituality. He states, as for the Dawkins scale and your modification of it, I probably belong at level 1, but I have to qualify. Since my 1982-83 discovery, I have become extremely skeptical of how other believers model their knowledge of God. They use metaphors from many walks of life, coming from the public knowledge of others. Thus, they suppress their own personal knowledge. Because of this, you will probably have to place me at level 10. Like St. Paul writes, that which we see is but an image in a mirror, not the real thing. Next is English biotechnologist Mark James, who since 2009 has been working out a chemical/thermodynamic-based explanation theory for human existence, purpose, and morality. When queried about the scale, he states, regarding the Dawkins scale, I cannot easily place myself because I don't have a supernatural entity that designed and created the universe, so I would be a strict 7. However, My theory that there is a natural arrow of time driving increasing order in the universe to a point where life becomes godlike, or in my appropriately very stable iron instability arrow of time. I do, however, still believe in the long-term effect of the second law, so in terms of the classical definition I am a strict 7. However, I do think that people are entitled to their beliefs, as long as they are peaceful and respect others' beliefs, so perhaps that drops me to less than 6. I used to be a strong 10 for 15 years, but the effect of belief on human evolution and its production of scientific logic gave it some limited justification. I am actually an atheist. My philosophy on God is actually described by yourself a response to free energy, so-called islands of negative entropy, and a future evolutionary level of human consciousness, not some unsupportable metaphysical entity. Next we have Ari Ben-Nam, author of the 2007 book Entropy Demystified, a physical chemistry professor in Israel, who states, I looked at the scale. I do not fit there. Perhaps you should add me at number 11 or 12 or higher. When I was a boy, I used to say that I don't believe in God. Later, I realized that even that statement is not correct. Now, if someone asks me, do you believe in God? I say I don't understand the question and ask, what is God? I really do not know what people are talking about when they say God. This convoluted answer, however, should be taken with a grain of salt, being that in the last page of his book, he devotes a section to quoting from Genesis, talking about how in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and speculates on how this might relate to the Big Bang and whether or not the initial state of the universe was at a low or a high entropy state. Next we have Newfoundland-born Canadian philosopher Richard Krant, whom curiously I just pulled this morning. Since the last 10 or so years, he's been working out a psychodynamic theory of conservation of vital energy, focusing on how traumatic events affect the energy system of the mind thermodynamically. He states, I would have to say I agree with Carl Jung, so I must be a 1, although I cannot claim to understand God or what true form God exists in exactly. This does not make God any less real for me personally. Do you believe in the Higgs boson, the God particle?
Why are you not a Christian?
Because I see no evidence whatever for any of the Christian dogmas. I've examined all the stock arguments in favor of the existence of God, and none of them seem to me to be logically valid.
Do you think there's a practical reason for having a religious belief for many people?
Well, there can't be a practical reason for believing what isn't true. That's quite, at least I rule it out as impossible. Either the thing is true or it isn't. If it is true, you should believe it, and if it isn't, you shouldn't. And if you can't find out whether it's true or whether it isn't, you should suspend judgment. But you can't, it seems to me, a fundamental dishonesty and a fundamental treachery to intellectual integrity to hold a belief because you think it's useful and not because you think it's true.
Well, I was thinking of those people who find that some kind of religious code helps them to live their lives. It gives them a very strict set of rules, the rights and the wrongs.
Yes, but you know, those rules are generally quite mistaken. A great many of them do more harm than good. And they would probably be able to find a rational morality that they could live by if they dropped this irrational, traditional, taboo morality that comes down from savage ages.
But are we, perhaps the ordinary person, perhaps isn't strong enough to find this own personal ethic? They have to have something imposed upon them from outside.
Oh, I don't think that's true. And what is imposed on you from outside is of no value whatever. It doesn't count.
Well, you were brought up, of course, as a Christian. When did you first decide that you did not want to remain a believer in the Christian ethic?
I never decided that I didn't want to remain a believer. I decided between the ages of 15 and 18, I spent almost all my spare time thinking about Christian dogmas and trying to find out whether there was any reason to believe them. And by the time I was 18, I discarded the last of them.
So there's the great Bertrand Russell, telling it like it is. Russell is known as 20th century's greatest atheist. Hence, he would be characterized as Dawkins number 7. Myself, as discussed in the video, am a Dawkins number 10. Like Russell, I was forced to tread through a path of self-education, starting from an age 5 question about where does God live, upwards through chemical engineering studies, and further prolonged research in the field of comparative religion and mythology in a quest for knowledge, which, to note, is embodied presently in a personal library totaling 12,047 books, of which 330 are in thermodynamics, the subject upon which the modern physical chemistry morality system is based. In plain speak, for me, there is no God. It is not even a thought in the back of my mind. There are no spirits. There are no supernatural forces. All that exists is matter and energy, governed by the laws of hard physical science. The theory of life, death, afterlife, in particular, life and the origin of life, is a defunct theory passed on to us through religious mythological teachings. Morality, however, does exist, and is explained within the framework of thermodynamics, the laws that govern the known universe, in particular in terms of being explained by way of differentials of Gibbs free energy, the same energy that governs and describes the nature of reactions that occur between the atoms of the periodic table, a morality system as outlined in 1809 by German polymath Johann von Goethe. Hence, I am what might be called, in one step above atheism, as a Goetheanist, or a believer in Goetheanism, or humanism mixed with physicalism, mixed with materialism. So there you have it. My Dawkins number is 10. What's yours?
On the scales of belief, there was a time in my life when I was quite a few years back, actually quite a long time ago, that I was a 1. Without a doubt, I believed in God. It wasn't even a question. Now I'm a 6. Most days I'm a 6. Some days I lean towards 7, or in the middle, but that's kind of where I'm at this point in my life.